Hi, this is Joe Wood. I am a business finance and health science careers teacher at Winfield High School, and I'm doing a presentation today, a case study for students with special needs um, for my Fort Hays State Graduate Studies course. My average student, and so I really, I'm late with this assignment, and I apologize, but we had a couple short weeks in a row, and my ability to connect with one of our sped teachers was limited because I kind of wanted to focus on one particular student. Um, and let me just back up and talk about kind of what my average student is. As a business finance teacher, not a lot of students sign up for business finance because it sounds like painful and torture, which I can't disagree with that to a certain extent, right? But obviously, there's definitely some upsides to business finance, but it's definitely not one of those classes that jumps off the page at people. Hey, I want to take accounting. That sounds really fun. And so the typical student that I get in my elective courses between that and then health science, which is obviously quite a bit different, but I have a bachelor's in biology and a master's um, in business administration, and so I kind of get a changes up my day a little bit. But my average student, I mean, to be in my health science program, I teach the upper level courses. So the requirement, you have to have a 3.0 to be in the class. So, and then my business classes, a lot of times they don't attract students that are below a 3.0 because of the difficulty level. And so most of my students come to me already having decent study skills, decent, intellectual abilities, from a GPA standpoint, from a motivation standpoint. They're usually students that maybe, what they might lack in IQ, they make up for in their dedication, discipline, organization, ability to meet deadlines, things like that. So my typical class doesn't really have, I don't really deal with lower levels of disrespect or kids that are laying their head down on the desk all the time or, things like that in comparison to the norm. So I feel like, my class kind of scares away some of those students. Um, but I have one student that I've had a actually, I had his girlfriend in my class last year, and so he managed to find his way into my classroom kind of on numerous occasions. And I feel like I have a good rapport with him, but he now I actually have him in class, and my rapport's gone down because now I'm kind of an authoritative person in his life, and that so it's been a little bit of a struggle because before I got to be kind of like the fun teacher that would let him kind of come in and sit next to his girlfriend. Um, but now I'm the guy who's a threat to his eligibility. And so he is an athlete, kind of a little bit of a class clown, one of those traditional students where they kind of, if you put them on the spot around their peers, they're always going to kind of go with that. Um, Being dumb is cooler than being smart. Um, and I don't know, it's kind of, which I personally kind of struggle with that a little bit just as a personality struggle because I was always the student that was cared about my grades more than my peers, and and so sometimes that personality kind of instantly frustrates me. So I have to be a lot more intentional um, when I do that. And one of the things that I've definitely learned with him is that he's that traditional kid that if you respond or interact publicly in the class, then it just kind of fuels his fire. To a certain extent, it gets him more frustrated, more off topic, more, whatever. And so definitely, you know, the type of kid that when you call them over to your desk, they do a lot better. Definitely has some of those kind of ADHD characteristics, really struggles to stay on topic, stay focused, um, has to get up and needs to move and, those kinds of things. And he, in his younger years was on a more of a special ed plan that he's progressed to a more normal class. I spent some time talking with his special education teacher, and so he's kind of trying to transition out of that, and so that he's in a normal school schedule, but still on an IEP. And so that kind of gives you an idea as to kind of the description of the box or mold that he might fit into. When I met with his teacher, had a really good long conversation. She's a really um, active SPED teacher, someone who will show up in the classroom, check on kids, see how things are going, does a really good job of communicating with teachers, and so she does a great job. But the core standard that they focus on um, is this idea of develop, implement, and model responsible decision making skills. And so that's kind of what her big main focus, and that's the Kansas State Department of Education standard that's associated with it. And the goal that they have for this particular focus student is to demonstrate the ability to manage his own academic responsibilities, right? Attend classes regularly. Don't sneak out to the bathroom for 20 minutes at a time and go find your girlfriend somewhere else or get distracted. Um, and so make sure that they're abiding by school policies, right? And he has a tendency to kind of miss assignments and slough them off and things like that. So he's one of those kids that really has to be very intentional to get his assignments completed and done. Um, and so they monitor him with weekly reports. And so it's one that I actually, after I met with this teacher, we went through his grades real quick. And I showed him that I hadn't put in his presentation grade, which was a 0 at the time, because eligibility checks were that morning. And so I was trying to work with him, and um, so that way I didn't put him. And she said that if I confirmed that if I would have put that in, his grade would have dropped enough that he would have been ineligible for the his sporting event this this week. So um, try to work with them in those areas for sure. So the accommodations that are on his IEP are text directions should be read aloud, and so um, I pretty much do that anyways. I'm a heavily, most of my instructions or activities or things of that nature are all on Google Classroom, kind of a COVID scar tissue, I guess. And so I try to put it all on there, and so I have it on there before class starts. I make it available to the students. When it does become that portion of the class where there is the assignment or activity or whatever it is, it's usually a Google Classroom assignment. I put it up on the board. I read it through with everybody. I always try to make sure pay a little bit more attention to make sure that my focus student is focused on what I'm saying and not distracted by peers or whatever's on his Chromebook. Separate setting. We really haven't had to do the separate setting. I have had a conversation with the students about potentially getting a different seat because I let my students select their own seats in my class, and for the most part, it's usually successful. Um, doesn't sometimes come with some threats, and sometimes we have to rearrange for a day or a week, and then I let them go back, and then they work on being more adults. Um, but definitely gets additional time. I'm one of those teachers. Deadlines to me are pretty soft. It's more of this is a target to be on track for the semester, and if you're a day or two late, it really doesn't bother me one bit. I usually, and again, probably COVID scar tissue, is I usually wait to grade my assignments. I grade them, but I wait to post them into Power School and for about 2 weeks, and so that way students that have been gone have time to get caught back up before um, zeros or whatever pops up. Um, so my classroom accommodations that I try to provide, I really try um, to make sure, like, and I already said the first bullet, to call the focus student over to my desk to speak and address issues in a more private setting where it doesn't challenge him and put him in a position where he feels like he needs to show off to his peers. And I try to interact with the focus student more throughout the class period. Um, Not like in an obvious way, but just sometimes like when I'm actively monitoring the class, walking through while they're working on assignments or group work or whatever. Um, and the table that he sits at is a little more rowdy bunch of athletic males. Um, but I make sure to try to limit distractions and, like I said, just keep a closer eye. I communicate assignments and deadlines, make sure that they're more aware. Sometimes I'll call him over to my desk on his way out. Obviously, I'll have a good relationship with the student's IEP coordinator, and so we communicate on a fairly regular basis. And she has a really good relationship with him, and so usually when I speak to her, assignments get done pretty quick. Like the presentation that I mentioned earlier got submitted the next day after after we had our meeting. Um, and then obviously I communicate with the focus students coach as well. His classroom's right next to mine, so it makes it really nice and easy and convenient. And he is a good influencer. And so I also, part of what I try to do from actual accommodations in my class, not really accommodation, but more just a relationship building, is I try to spend a little bit of time talking sports at my sports table, right? So if they see me as someone who likes sports, who appreciates it, who comes to their games, and then when I call on them to simmer down in class, I have a little bit more credibility and relationship capital with those individuals. And so, progress monitoring for me, it's really big. Is I just try to make sure that I keep on top of them with missing assignments, late assignments. Gets a little bit more um, attention of mine in those areas, and then I try to celebrate when things come in on time and when he's in a position where I don't have to ask him to redo his assignment. So those are the things that I do from a monitoring standpoint. And so it's probably long enough, I would imagine, but I really enjoyed this assignment, to be honest, because it gave me a chance, and I didn't want to just check off a box. I actually wanted to like go find and really make the schoolwork applicable to my workday and to my students, and to really try to help me be a better teacher. So thanks, and have a great day. Thanks for listening.